The trap doesn't start when you take the bad trade. It starts with the thought before the trade. And if you can catch that thought, you can interrupt the pattern. This week you've learned about FOMO, revenge trading, overtrading, analysis paralysis, and recency bias. You know what these patterns look like, but knowing isn't enough. You need to recognize them before they take over, before the urgency or discomfort makes the pattern feel like truth. That's the work. Learning to see your triggers before they trigger you. Every pattern has early warning signs, thoughts that show up before the action, feelings that build before the urgency takes over. After a loss, the thought, "I need to make that back," comes before the revenge trade. After a win, "I'm finally seeing the market clearly," comes before marginal setups. When you're watching the market move without you, "I'm missing it," comes before FOMO. These thoughts aren't the pattern yet. They're the signal that the pattern is starting, and catching that signal is how you stop it. The pause between trigger and action is where you have leverage. The trigger happens. You can't control that. The emotional response shows up automatically. That's biology. But between that response and your action, there's a pause. It might be seconds, but it exists. And in that pause, you can name what's happening. This is revenge. This is FOMO. Just naming it changes it. It stops being a signal and becomes a pattern you recognize. And patterns you recognize are easier to resist than feelings that seem like truth. Your specific triggers matter. You don't respond to losses the same way someone else does. Your overtrading might show up after wins. Someone else's might show up after boredom. The general patterns are universal, but the specific ways they activate in you are personal. The better you know your triggers, the earlier you can catch them. That's why review is critical. Not just reviewing your trades, reviewing what you were thinking before the trade, what you were feeling. That's where the pattern lives. Building pattern awareness is a skill. The first few times, you'll recognize the pattern after you've already acted. That's still progress. You're building awareness. The next time, you might catch it during the trade. Eventually, you catch it before you act. You feel the urge, you recognize the pattern, and you choose not to act on it. That's the goal. But you don't skip steps. You build awareness by noticing the pattern wherever you can, even if it's after the fact. Interruption doesn't mean the feeling goes away. It means you don't act on it. You feel the urgency after a loss. That doesn't disappear because you named it. But naming it means you don't have to take the trade. The feeling can be there, and you can still wait. Interruption is about breaking the link between the feeling and the action, not eliminating the feeling. Here's the practice. After every trade, ask 3 questions. What was I thinking before I took this trade? What was I feeling? Does this match a pattern I know? If it does, write it down, not as self-criticism, as data. I felt confident after 2 wins and took a marginal setup. Recency bias. That's not failure. That's awareness. And awareness is what lets you catch it earlier next time. You're training yourself to recognize the thought before it becomes the action. The patterns don't go away. FOMO will still show up. Revenge trading will still tempt you. These aren't problems to solve once. They're patterns to manage continuously. But managing gets easier when you know what to look for. When you've seen the pattern enough times to recognize it in its early stages. When you've practiced the pause enough times that it becomes automatic. That's when you stop being controlled by the patterns and start being able to choose differently. This week was about seeing the traps. Next week is about living with that awareness. catching yourself 1 second earlier each time, building the skill of interruption through practice. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to notice. And noticing is enough to start changing the pattern. Because you can't interrupt what you don't see. And now you know what to look for.